€8 billion. That's how much longer-term debt Italy will attempt to offload today in the first big hurdle facing Mario Monti's technocratic government since a disastrous upset just a month ago. The tender includes 3, 7 and 10-year notes and will set the tone for a string of debt sales through early 2012. Prime Minister Monti convened a cabinet meeting yesterday to outline his government's next measures to boost economic growth and may offer details at a press conference scheduled for noon in Rome today. Well, let's get straight to Michael Plavnik, head of the short-term interest rate desk at Citi. Michael, Rome managed to sell, €9 billion of 6-month bills at 3.25% yesterday. Will lenders use last week's flood of cheap liquidity from the ECB to soak up today's tender? Or the flip side, of course, was yesterday's ECB deposit figure a really bad sign?
Morning, Nigel. Good to be here. I think it really comes down to not as much as whether the money that the ECB provided will help with the 10-year auction, as much as it will be to see if they show up in bond purchases after the auction. So the pattern that we've seen is after sort of new issuances or auctions, we've seen S&P purchases come in. And if we see an absence of that, then I think the market will sort of be afraid that the message is still consistent. And from Draghi, in a sense that Draghi doesn't want to increase purchases. And that's really what's the back and forth in the market. And until we really get that issue out of the way as to whether Draghi wants to increase S&P purchases, I think the auctions are all going to have a hard time going through.
Okay, and Italy, of course, got to raise a mere €440 billion in debt in 2012, and that's clearly beyond the current firepower of Europe's bailout facilities. So how do we expect this to develop in the first quarter?
Well, I think there's 4 criteria that we really sort of have to hit in order for Italy and a lot of these other countries to be able to issue the debt. And sort of one of the criteria is the market has to see new money. And that new money has to come whether it's S&P purchases or whether it's more commitments by Germany and France to pledge into that. The second commitment has to be no more PSIs, no more private sector involvement in restructuring and sort of changing the capital structure of the bond markets. I think one of the biggest hurdles for the markets that people aren't sort of paying attention to is the ECB bond purchases have changed the capital structure of the bond markets because the ECB has put themselves at the top of the capital structure and took themselves out of the restructuring. They ended up actually making money on their bond purchases while investors took all the haircuts. The third criteria is sort of this fiscal austerity but positive growth. We all know that they can sort of meet some fiscal austerity targets. Well, maybe not all of us know it, but as Greece hasn't hit them all. But I think the important part to get out of this sort of negative debt dynamic is growth. And everyone's worried about growth. The way Mario Draghi spoke about growth being sort of, he spoke about mild recession the way we in London talk about, it's going to be raining outside today. Like it's a given factor. Okay. And so we sort of need to see that.
Okay, and finally, Monti won the Senate backing for €30 billion in austerity measures last week. Is this actually going to get Italy out of this debt trap or not?
No. Again, I think the debt trap, we really start to have to see positive growth. In Greece, for example, classic example, since fourth quarter of 2008, Greece has only seen 1 positive quarterly growth. And in fact, they even stopped reporting quarterly growth numbers because there's no positive growth. So I think what we really need to see is instead of these austerities, we need to see some ways that they can get austerity, but show the market that there will be growth. And that will help us.
Okay, Michael, thanks very much indeed for that. Now, ahead of that key bond auction, let's take a quick look at where the European stock markets are trading at the open this morning. All positive, not a great deal of movement, still thin trading, but as you can see, all positive across the board for now. Elsewhere on the currency markets, euro-yen hitting a 10-year low at 100.35 on the back of selling by Japanese retail investors and exporters. Moves also amplified by that year-end liquidity. Now, Reuters' Tara Joseph joins us from Hong Kong. Good morning, Tara. How did the rest of the Asian session fare?
Well, Nigel, those worries about the Italian debt auction stretching all the way to Asia today and hitting Asian stocks. The Nikkei down 0.3% at the close with exporters under pressure, also from a weak euro and strong yen. Here in Hong Kong, the Hang Seng just closing now, and it lost over 0.5% in the next to last trading day of the year. Now, even though it's been a dismal year for China stocks, Hong Kong has retained its crown as the top exchange for IPOs this year, and that is the 3rd year in a row. The Hong Kong exchange is beating out rivals New York and London as global financial activity shifts eastward towards Asia. And China e-commerce company Alibaba hiring a U.S. lobbying firm in a sign that it may make a bid for all of Yahoo. Analysts say hiring a Washington firm could address any U.S. political opposition over national security risks if Yahoo is sold. That's the way it's looking over here in very thin trade, Nigel. Back to you.
Tara, thanks very much indeed there, Tara Joseph. The top world news story on Reuters this morning. At least 17 people died and 80 were injured after an early morning explosion at a warehouse storing gunpowder, likely for use at mine blast sites in Myanmar's biggest city of Yangon, police and fire officials said on Thursday. 30 people have died in an apparent airstrike by Turkish warplanes near the Iraqi border overnight, according to a local official. And in North Korea, thousands of mourners observed 3 minutes of silence in remembrance of Kim Jong-il today. Civilians bowed their heads in prayer in Pyongyang as a siren went off at 12 noon local time. On Twitter, the top story trending on Reuters.com right now is a claim from the Venezuelan President Hugo Chavez that the United States might have developed a way to give Latin American leaders cancer after Argentina's Cristina Fernandez joined the list of presidents diagnosed with the disease. And before we go, I'll leave you with our pick of the day. Reuters photographer Amar Awad has captured Palestinian police officers trying to restore order during scuffles between members of the Armenian and Greek Orthodox clergy in the Church of the Nativity in Bethlehem. I'm Nigel Stevenson. This is Reuters.